My mom satisfying slid a deed across the Thanksgiving table, right past the cranberry sauce, right past the bread rolls, and placed it in front of my sister Danielle. Then she looked at her, smiled, and said, "This is for the one who actually made us proud." My dad turned to me, locked eyes, and said, "You should be grateful we even saved you a seat at this table." Danielle didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She just smirked like she had been rehearsing this moment in the mirror. My hands were shaking under the table. My throat was tight, but I didn't cry. I set down my fork slowly, looked at every single one of them, and said quietly, "You're going to regret this." And 2 weeks later, they did. My name is Sophia. I'm 34 years old. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, the older of 2 daughters. I worked as a freelance investigative journalist. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't make me rich, but I was good at one thing: digging up the truth. My sister, Danielle, 2 years younger, was always the favorite. She was the prize child, the one who got all the praise. Pageant girl, sorority girl, the daughter who married well and threw dinner parties that made the neighbors jealous. I was the opposite. I was quiet. I was bookish. I asked uncomfortable questions at the dinner table. And my parents treated my curiosity like it was a character flaw. I put myself through college with scholarships and side jobs. Not a single dollar came from my family. The house at the center of all this was my grandmother's craftsman home on Maple Ridge. Grandma Ellen had always promised it to me. I was the only grandchild who actually visited her in her final years. I drove there every single weekend. I held her hand when nobody else would. I wasn't the polished daughter they wanted to show off at church or at cocktail parties. But I had something they didn't expect. I knew how to find what people tried to hide. But if you've ever been the one your family overlooked, the one who showed up, did the work, and still got nothing, subscribe to this channel. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been passed over for someone who didn't earn it? I want to hear your story. Let's go. It was Thanksgiving. I had driven 4 hours to be there. 4 hours through traffic, through rain, through the kind of silence in a car that makes you question why you're even going. But I went, because that's what I always did. Mom, Dad, Danielle, her husband Craig, and me. 5 people around a table covered in food that smelled like home but felt like a trap. After the meal, Dad stood up and cleared his throat. He said they had family business to discuss. He pulled out a manila envelope, opened it, and slid the deed to Grandma Ellen's house across the table. It had been transferred into Danielle's name. I felt my stomach drop. Dad's justification was simple, cold, and rehearsed. Danielle has a growing family. She needs the space. You're single, Sophia. What would you even do with it? I reminded them that Grandma Ellen had promised me that house. I was the one who drove every weekend to care for her. I managed her medications. I took her to every single appointment. I was there when she was scared. I was there when the lights in her mind were still on. Mom waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. Your grandmother was confused at the end. She didn't know what she was saying. Then Danielle leaned forward and said something I'll never forget. Sophia, honestly, you should be grateful you don't have to deal with the property taxes. You can barely keep your little freelance thing afloat. Craig laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a real one. Nobody at that table defended me, not one person. I asked the only question that mattered. Did Grandma leave a will? The table went silent, not for a second, for too long. Dad snapped. There was no will. We handled it as next of kin. End of discussion. But I saw it. I saw my mother's eyes dart to the left. Just for a flash. It was a micro-expression. A tell. After 10 years of interviewing people who lie for a living, you learn to catch those things. I didn't argue. I picked up my coat, walked to the door, and turned back one last time. I spent 10 years learning how to find things people bury. Remember that. Nobody said a word. On the drive home, headlights cutting through the dark, I checked my email at a rest stop. There was a message from Grandma Ellen's former neighbor, a woman named Linda. It had been sitting in my inbox for weeks. The subject line read, "Your grandmother asked me to keep something safe for you." I pulled over completely. My hands were shaking again, but this time, it wasn't from hurt. It was from adrenaline. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I found out I had been removed from the family group text. But I didn't find out from my parents. I didn't find out from Danielle. I found out because a cousin mentioned something about the Christmas plan, and I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. I texted my mom directly. Her reply was soft and calculated. "We just thought you'd want space, honey. You seemed upset." That's what they did. They cut me out and repackaged it as compassion. They made me disappear and called it a kindness. A week later, I attended a mutual family friend's holiday fundraiser in town. I almost didn't go, but I went because I refused to let them shrink my world. Danielle was there. She was holding court in the center of the room, showing people photos on her phone of what she was calling her new house, Grandma Ellen's house. She was talking about renovations, new paint colors, knocking out a wall. When someone turned to me and asked about the house, Danielle jumped in before I could even open my mouth. "Oh, Sophia's not really in a position to maintain a property. She writes little internet articles. It's cute." People laughed politely. My face burned. I held my composure, but my jaw was clenched so tight, I thought my teeth would crack. Then I overheard her say something to another guest when she thought I wasn't listening. Between us, my parents had to step in because Sophia would have just let the house rot. She can barely take care of herself. That one hit different. Oh, that one landed right in my chest. But the worst was still coming. A few days later, I was sorting through mail at my P.O. box, the one where Grandma Ellen's old mail still got routed, and I found a bank statement. There was a savings account in Grandma Ellen's name. It had held roughly $40,000. And it had been quietly drained 2 months before Grandma died. The withdrawals were made by my father. He had power of attorney. I sat in my car staring at that statement for a long time. And that's when I finally saw the full picture. This wasn't just favoritism. This was coordinated. They moved money. They transferred property. They erased my grandmother's wishes, all while she was still alive. But here's the thing. I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I drove home, opened my laptop, created a new folder, and labeled it Maple Ridge. Then I started doing what I do best, investigating. They forgot who I was. They saw a quiet woman who wrote articles. They didn't see the journalist who once exposed a county commissioner for fraud. That was their mistake. I went to see Linda the next day. She lived 3 houses down from Grandma Ellen's place. She opened the door with tears in her eyes and said, "I've been waiting for you to come." She handed me a sealed envelope. Grandma Ellen had given it to her 8 months before she died, with one instruction: "Give this to Sophia if my children try anything." I opened it at Linda's kitchen table. Inside was a handwritten letter from my grandmother. Her handwriting was shaky but clear. The letter stated exactly what she wanted. The house and all remaining assets were meant for me. She referenced a formal will that had been drafted with a lawyer named Gerald Pratt. There was also a USB drive tucked in the envelope. I plugged it into my laptop and my breath caught. It contained scanned documents, a copy of the will, signed and witnessed. And screen-captured text messages between my father and Danielle, messages where they discussed how to handle the will before probate. One message from my dad to Danielle read, "If we move fast, Sophia won't know until it's done. She won't fight it. She never fights." I sat in Linda's kitchen staring at that screen. My hands were steady now. What they didn't know was that Grandma Ellen saw them coming before I did. She built me an insurance policy out of love and evidence. And I was about to cash it in, but I didn't confront them. Not yet. I knew from my career that you never tip off the subject of a story before the story runs. I copied everything. I backed it up in 3 places. Then I called Gerald Pratt. Gerald picked up on the second ring. He remembered my grandmother immediately. He confirmed everything. He had drafted the will himself. Grandma Ellen was lucid, determined, and specific. The house goes to Sophia. Period. But then, he told me something that made my blood run cold. "Your father came to me after your grandmother passed and asked me to lose the file. I refused. He threatened to report me to the bar for a made-up complaint, so I stepped back, but I never destroyed the documents." Gerald offered to represent me pro bono. His voice was steady and sure. Your grandmother was one of the most clear-minded women I ever worked with. She deserves to have her wishes honored. Within 48 hours, Gerald filed a legal challenge to the fraudulent property transfer. Meanwhile, my family grew more arrogant and more oblivious. Danielle posted a full home tour video on social media. She walked through every room, smiling at the camera, and captioned it, "So blessed to carry on Grandma's legacy in this beautiful home." My mom called me for the first time in 2 weeks, not to apologize, not to check on me. She called to ask if I could help move some of Grandma's old furniture out so Danielle could redecorate. Dad sent me a text. It said, "I hope you've moved past the Thanksgiving thing. Family's family." I didn't reply to any of it. I was building my case, and then I did something else. I sat down and wrote an investigative article, not for revenge, because the story was real. Elder financial abuse by family members, suppressed wills, stolen inheritances. It was a story that mattered far beyond my own pain. I submitted it, with names changed for the time being, to a major regional publication I had contributed to before. The editor read it that same night and called me back. Her exact words were, "This is front-page material." 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, a Tuesday morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee when the article went live on the front page of the Charlotte Observer's online edition. At the headline read, "When Family Becomes the Predator, One Woman's Fight Against Elder Financial Abuse." It didn't name my family directly, but it detailed the scheme with enough specificity that anyone in our community recognized them immediately. The old house on Maple Ridge, the drained savings account, the suppressed will, the Thanksgiving confrontation. Within hours, the article went viral. Local news stations picked it up. Social media exploded with shares and commentary. People in our town were reading it over breakfast. Danielle called first. She was screaming so loud, I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "What did you do? What did you do?" I kept my voice calm and even. I told the truth. That's literally my job. Dad called next. His voice was low and shaking with fury. "You just destroyed this family." I didn't hesitate. "No, Dad. You destroyed it when you stole from your own mother." Silence. Complete silence on the line. Then he hung up. And that same day, Gerald Pratt filed an emergency motion in probate court to void the fraudulent property transfer. He attached the original will, the USB evidence, the scanned text messages, and Grandma Ellen's handwritten letter. A hearing was scheduled within the week. The courtroom was small and quiet. The judge reviewed everything carefully. She read the text messages between my father and Danielle out loud in open court, the ones where they planned to suppress the will. The ones where they said I would never fight. Dad's attorney tried to argue the will had been informally revoked. The judge didn't let him finish. "A witnessed, notarized will is not revoked by a text message conspiracy." The ruling came down fast. The property transfer was voided. The house was awarded to me per the legal will of Ellen Margaret Hayes. The $40,000 in drained savings was ordered to be repaid to the estate. My father had to write a check. Outside the courtroom, just in the hallway, Danielle grabbed my arm. Her eyes were red and wild. "You really did this to your own sister?" I pulled my arm back gently, looked at her, and said, "You really did this to your own grandmother." Craig stared at the floor. Mom stood by the wall and would not make eye contact. Dad walked out without saying a word. As I stepped out of the courthouse into the cold December air, my phone buzzed. The article had been shared over 200,000 times. Hundreds of people were leaving comments, telling their own stories of family betrayal and stolen inheritances. I moved into Grandma Ellen's house on Maple Ridge the following month. I kept the kitchen exactly the way she had it. The yellow curtains, the cast-iron skillet on the stove, the photos stuck to the fridge with magnets she collected from every state she visited. Gerald Pratt became a trusted friend. Inspired by the case, he started a pro bono initiative for elder abuse victims in our county. My article got picked up by a national outlet. I was offered a regular investigative column. My family didn't contact me. I didn't chase them. Danielle quietly deleted the home tour video from social media. Her friends stopped calling. Dad and Mom faced a financial audit triggered by the court's findings. Their reputation in the community crumbled. One evening, I sat on Grandma Ellen's porch, holding her handwritten letter, listening to the crickets sing in the trees she had planted years ago. They gave away what wasn't theirs and told me to be grateful for the crumbs. But Grandma knew. She always knew. And the truth doesn't stay buried just because powerful people shoveled dirt on top of it. If someone in your family tried to erase what you were owed, your inheritance, your dignity, your place at the table, I want you to know something. Your story matters. Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. You don't have to stay quiet just to keep the peace. Sometimes the peace was never yours. It was just their silence. Click hype to help this story reach others who need it. If this story hit close to home, then you're in the right place. This channel is for people who were told they weren't enough and proved everyone wrong. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And if you've got a story of your own, the comments are open. I'll see you in the next one.